Hello everyone, sorry that this video came out kind of a lot later than I expected. I'm kind of going through quite a few things in my life right now, so there's been a bit of delay as to the time I could spend on creating this tutorial. I'll continue to work on this when I have the chance and when I have the time. Right now it's just there's still quite a lot of things that I'm trying to juggle in my life. But without further ado, in this part of the tutorial, I'll be going through how you can add in the animation montage for equipping and unequipping sort, like so, right here. To have your character equip and unequip a weapon, you will need to make an action mapping. So in the blueprints folder, let me go to the input folder, and then in the actions, we're going to make an input action for our button so that we can equip and unequip our sword. So I'm going to right click and then go into input and input action, and I'll call this as IA equip sword, like that. And then within this, you don't need to do anything at all. So let's go back to our IMC default right here. Click into that, and then I'm just going to add in a new mapping right here. And then from this, I'm going to search for the equip sword that we just made. So click on that, and then for the button, I'm going to use 1 for my sword. And then back in our third-person character, we go into our third-person character blueprint right here. We will be able to call out our input action of our equip sword. So if I type in IA equip sword, you can see that it's right here, and then we'll have our input action. From here, the first thing we need to do is to check if we have the weapon in our character at all. So if there's no weapon, then of course the system shouldn't do anything at all. So we'll need to use the isValid node. From the start, I'm going to drag out and then search for isValid over here, this question mark. And then the input object is going to be the weapon that the character will be equipping onto their hand. So for now, I'm just going to use the pickup weapon, since right now we're just using one type of sword, which is the sword. And if we have multiple types of weapons in the future, like the sword, the great sword, and the axe, then we'll have to create new variables for each of the weapon type. But for now, I'm just going to use the pickup weapon. So we can add that into our input object like that. So from the isValid, if we have a sword, then we'll do the montages for us to equip and unequip the sword from our player's hand to our player's unequipped slot, right? And then if it's not valid, then we won't do anything because there's no sword to equip anything at all. And we could either do this with a branch if you want. If it's just a single type of sword that you're using, we could use a branch, and the condition will be if the sword is on equipped or not. And if it's true, then we'll play the unequipped sword montage, and then if it's false, then we'll play the equipped sword montage. So that's one way you could do with if you have only a single type of weapon that you're trying to use. So a branch will be a good way to use. But since we have different weapon types, I wouldn't use a branch for this case. Instead, I will be using a switch on name node right here. So with just this switch on name node, it would use a name in order to make a switch, which is pretty much like a branch, but then there's just multiple layers of things that you do as opposed to a branch. So with this, I can add in a pin and then change the case. Here you can change the case name into something like a sword that I'll be using for this case. So I'm using swords, so that's why I'm going to use swords as my name case over here. So in the isValid, I'm just going to connect that over here. And we'll need a name variable for the switch on name. So in the variables section of the components, let's add in the variable. And then I'm just going to name this as the weapon status to signify if our current status of our weapon is a sword, or is just nothing, or it's a axe or a great sword in the future that I'm going to build upon this logic, right? So from the boolean, I'm going to change this into a name. Compile and save. And by default, we'll set the name weapon status name as none, because at first when you play the game, in my case at least, there's no weapons on the character, which signifies the weapon status should be on none, right? So I'm just gonna leave this as none, and then drag out the weapon status and do a get, and then link this up to the selection here. So on default, it will be none, and then on this one, it will change the weapon status should change in the sword. Save. From this point onward, we'll need to make the animation montages for the drawing and sheathing of our swords. And we can use a node called the play montage. So there's two different nodes that you can use. There's the play montage and there's the play anim montage. I'll be using the play montage since if we compare it with the play anim montage, let me just pull that out for now. Like this. You can see there's a more noticeable difference between the two. For the play montage, it gives you more option to use as the animation montage is playing or when it's completed. For the play montage, you'll just play the montage from the beginning to end. And there's nothing you can really tweak as when the montage itself is playing or when it's complete. So that would be an issue if we use play montage as opposed to, play anim montage as opposed to play montage if we want to build the system. So I'll be using the play montage instead. And of course, we'll need a montage, actually a montage to play, so we'll have to build that. So let's go into our characters and then in our mannequins and the animations folder. Here I already retarget all the animations that I will need for the system. So if you haven't done so, check out the previous episode on animation retargeting to know how you could retarget animations from the Mixamo Ybot to the mannequin. And to continue on with this episode, to create a montage, let's just click on the animation that we would need to use for now, which is the equipped sword and the unequipped sword. So this one and that one. So with the equipped sword, I'm just gonna right click and then go into create. And then there's a create animation montage right here. So let's click on that. And then it will just create an animation montage file right here. And we click into it, this is the animation montage that I will be playing. And within this animation montage, we'll have to create an animation notifier over here into our track. So at the point where our character is about to draw the sword, we'll make an anim notify in order for us to tell the system to say that, oh, right now, I want my sword to be attached to the equip slot of my character. So if we right click, we can do an add notify, but right now we haven't made an anim notify for this yet, so we have to do that instead. And to create an animation notify, we'll have to use a blueprint. So back in our animations folder, I'm going to make a new folder and then call this the anim notify. And then within the anim notify, I'm going to right click and then go into blueprint. And then in blueprint class, I'm going to click on that. And then in the search over here, I am going to search for anim notify. Alright, so we'll have a list of these anim notify blueprints that we could use. And we'll just use the anim notify and the first one over here. So let's click on that and do select. And then I'll make the blueprint for the anim notify. And I'm going to call this AN attached sword. When you open this, you'll see a window like this. And the first thing we need to do is we need to override the one of the functions in this blueprint. And if we go over here and then in the functions tab, there's override. Click on that and then there's a receive notify over here. We're going to override the receive notify functions that it has on here. So let's click on that. And we'll get this. So the information that we'll need to use for this anim notifier is to check whether if the sword should be attached to the equip socket of our character or the unequipped socket of our character, right? So we will need to use our information from our third person character. So let me drag this out for now. And then from the mesh component over here, let's do a get owner. And from the get owner, I'm going to do a cast to the third person character right here, like so, and then link the execution up. And from that, again, we will need to check if the sword is actually there on the character itself. So we'll have to use the isValid node. So I'm going to search for isValid again, right here, and then connect that. And then the input object will be the pickup weapon that I'll be using for now. Later on, we'll have to change into like whether it's a sword, is a great sword, or an axe. But for now, again, I'm going to use a pickup weapon. So from the as BP third person character, I will search for a pickup weapon. So we're going to get a pickup weapon over here. and then link that up to the input object right here. And if it's not valid, we don't need to do anything. And then if it's valid, then we'll have to attach the sword onto whether the equip socket or the unequip socket. So from here, I'm going to call out the function of attach to character. Oops, my bad. No, you don't search it from here, you search it from the weapon pickup right here. From the pickup weapon, since the pickup weapon itself has the function for attach to character, I'm going to utilize that instead. So attach to character. So I can call the function of attach to character here. And now I can link the is valid here to that. And then you can see that we need a socket name, right? So from the pickup weapon again, I'm going to do a attach to socket. Get the attach to socket, which is the where we will unequip the sword, right? And I don't think I've made a socket for the equip onto the hand yet, so we'll have to do that. But essentially what I'm going to do is to have that do a select node over here, like that, and then change. So essentially it can pretty much act like a branch node as well. So we'll have two options, which is option 1 and 2. So let me link this attach to socket to option 1 first. And then with the index, there's different variables you can use, but for the index for this one, in this case, I'm going to use a boolean, like that. So this will essentially work as a branch as well. So, and then I'll put the return value into the socket name here. All right. So this logic is simply, it'll check like if which socket it'll be using right now. So if it's false, then it'll use the the name on the attached socket. And then we'll need to make a one for the true route for our swords. So let me go back into the blueprints and then go into our weapons. And within our base item, let's go to our base item. You can see that we have this attached to socket right here, right? So actually, I should probably rename this into like attached to equipped socket instead of, unequipped socket. Let's just name this as an attached to unequipped socket. Actually, we don't need socket because that'll be the name would be too long. So let's do an attached to unequipped. And then another name I'm going to add is, let's change that into name, and then the new variable, let's change this into attached to hand, like so, and compile and save. So within this, we'll have the attached to unequip, so it'll be a socket for unequipped slot, and then for attached to hand, it'll be a socket to equip the sword, or the weapon in this case, onto our hand. So this will be the new variable that we add for our base item. And within our sword weapon right here, the BP sword weapon, you can see that we have attached to unequip here and then attached to hand here. Right now we don't have any sockets in here, so we'll need to add in the sockets. So if we go back into our character mannequin and then mesh, going back to our skeleton over here, you can see we made the socket for our unequipped sword, right? So we can copy this name, and then put that as the unequipped socket name over here. So that will be the socket where it will be attached to when it's unequipped. And I don't think I have made a socket for the equip yet, so we'll have to make that as well. So in the right hand, which is where the socket, the sword will be attached to, right? So in the right hand here, I'm going to add a socket, right? And then I'm just going to add this as the equip sword socket, like that. And then I'm just going to copy that name over here and then paste this into the equip sword. Actually, I should do underscore here just to make these two match the same as in the namespace and all the stuff. So let's do that, like so. And we'll have to position the sword. So let's add a preview asset and then search for a sword. So I'm going to use the hero sword here. And from here we can adjust where the sword is going to be at. So, all right, so I'll just make it somewhere like this for now, just for as an example. So right now we have the socket for the equip sort and then socket for the unequip sort. And then we have this in our attached to unequip and attached to hand variable name over here. So back in our animation notifier for our attached sort, I can then use the pickup weapon and then search for a attach to equip, attached to hand, my bad. Yeah, get attached to hand, and then put that in the true. So with the index, we'll need a boolean for this index. So for the variables, let's go ahead and add a boolean. We can name this as anything you want actually. So I'm just gonna name this boolean as attached, like that, and then drag that in, and then get attached, and then put that in here. So the logic here is that if attached is true, then it will attach to the equip socket over here, the sword. So the sword will be over here instead of the unequip. And if it's false, then it will reattach back into the unequip socket, which is right here. And that's essentially what this logic will do. And all that stuff to do is to attach the executable to the return node right here. All right, and then save, compile, and save. And one more thing I kind of missed out. You have to make this attached variable into instance editable. So you have to make this public. So then we can edit this variable within our animation montage. So just remember to have this eye icon to be open so that it can be made into a public variable that we could use in other places. So let's compile and save that. And then within our animation montage, we can go to the timing where we should trigger the animation notify. So maybe like somewhere in frame 19 right here. And then in the notify over here in the number 1 track, I'm just going to right click and add a notify, and then add our newly made animation notify attached sort. All right. So for this one, we need to have this attached to our hand. So I'm going to click on attached right here to make it true. So let's save that. And then, well, this is the animation montage for our equip. I'm going to make another one for the unequip. So back into our animations folder, I'm going to right click on the unequipped and then do a create an animation montage. Go into that, and then at the place where it should unequip the sword, like somewhere over here, let's say 35. Same thing, at the track 1 of the notifies, I'm going to right click and add in the attached sword animation notify. And from here, I'm just leave the attached as false. So save that. And that will be how we will make the animation notify in our animation montage. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is to go back into third-person blueprint and then have the montage to be able to play within our blueprint. So let's head in. And then before we have this switch on name already set up, and with this play montage, right now I'm just going to add in a little pin, and then we're just going to call this as none, like so. We could use default. Default should be when there's nothing in the weapon status anymore, but I'm just going to make another none just in case if it doesn't work. So with the play montage over here, we will also need a skeletal mesh. So let's just grab our mesh from our third-person blueprint over here, and then just link that to the skeletal mesh component. And then when the weapon status is a sword, we will unequip the sword. So we'll choose the unequip montage. And then when the status is none, which is there's no sword on hand right now, right? So we will need to have the play montage to be equip sword. Sword equip montage right here. And let's connect the none to this execution over here. And then same thing, I'll duplicate the mesh over here and then link that up to the skeletal mesh component, like so. And then one more thing, after the montage is done playing, we will need to set the weapon status. So when a character unequips, the weapon status should go back to none, so because you're not holding the sword anymore, right? And from none, and when the equipped montage is played, from the uncompleted, we will set the weapon status as sword. So then it will tell you that the sword is equipped right now, like so. So that will be it for this logic right here. And then let's compound save and test this out. Alright, gonna pick up the sword, and then when I press 1, it should play the montage, like so. And if I press again, it will unequip. And one thing you can notice is that while the character is running, and if we press on equip, you can see that the legs are not working anymore, it's stationary. So that's a bug that we need to fix, and we'll have to do something in the animation blueprint in order to fix this problem. So let's go ahead and start doing that. If you're using the Unreal Mannequin like what I am right now, we can go to the characters, mannequins, and animations folder here, and we can see the animation blueprint for both Manny and Quinn. And since we're using Quinn as our example right now, you might think that we'll open the animation blueprint for Quinn, but we should be using the animation blueprint for Manny, since Quinn is the child class of Manny. So if we use Quinn, you can see that the parent class is the animation blueprint for Manny, and then there's no animation graph right here, you can see. So we'll have to go into the Manny instead, and then there will be anim graph over here, and then anything that we update over here, it will go to Quinn. So we don't have to worry about them being different at all. So we'll just correct everything here in Manny instead. So in order to correct the bug of the legs not moving, we'll have to use the slot, like right here, like the default slot, and we'll have to use the slot that pertains to the upper body of the mannequin. And then we go to window and then go to the slot manager over here. We open that. We can see that by default Unreal has already made some slots over here, and we'll just utilize this slot upper body over here. And if you don't have a slot, then you can simply add a slot here. Just press add and then name a new slot, and then it will put a slot over here that you can use. In order for us to use the slot, we will need a layer blend node. So we'll need the layer blend per bone over here in order to blend in the animation of the equipping and unequipping of the upper body with the running and the legs movement of the lower body. So we need to use that instead. And since we can't really just duplicate the animation states right here like that, because that will be a bit different, I believe. So in order to have use the same animation state, we will need to have this to be cached. So we can drag out from the little human icon over there and then type in cache, and then we can get the cached pose over here, and then just click on the save cached pose right here. We can save anything that's before this cached pose into this node over here, and I'm gonna name this cache pose as main state as well. I'm gonna say main state cached, like that. And then with that cache, we can now call in the main state cache. Use cache pose from main state cache, yeah, over here. So at the base pose, we're just gonna attach the main state cache over here to the base pose, and then duplicate that. So I still use the cache, and then I'll have this to be linked on with the slot. And I'm going to change this from the slot name, I'm going to change it into upper body right there, and have this linked up to the blend pose over here. So the main reason we're using the slot is to blend the different animations that we have, and to separate the bone movements of the upper body and the lower body. By using the slot and the layered blend per bone, we can remove the animations of the lower body, while the montage is playing the equipped and unequipped animations for the upper body. Next, in the layer blend per node, we'll have to tell which bones exactly it needs to use. So in the layer setup over here, and then in an index, there's a branch filters over here with 0 array elements right now. What we need to do is to add an element, and then open up the index one. I'm going to use the spine one, I believe, for the spine of the mannequin right here. So just put a bone name over here. And then blend depth, I'll explain later what it actually does, but for now I'm just keeping it at 0 to show you an example of what it does. So not only the spine one, we'll also need the bones for the left and right thigh as well. So let's add those in. So I'm going to click on the plus sign for 2 times. And then in index one, I'm just going to name this the bone for the thigh right, and then the bone name for the index 2 will be thigh left, like so. Alright, so now I can go ahead and compile and save. And that's all not done yet. We will have to go into our animation montages as well. So in our sword equip right here, in the default group over here, you can see that it's using the default slot right now. What we need to do is to change this slot name into the upper body. So if you made your own upper body slot, then you'll select your slot name over here as well. So there's that. Select that, and then you don't have to. It'll go back into the A pose or T pose, but you don't have to worry about it too much. Just go ahead and save, because if you try to open again, it'll go back into playing the animation again. So don't worry about if it goes into A pose or T pose. And for the unequipped sword as well, we'll need to change this default slot into upper body as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Save, and then close that out. And now we can go ahead and try and test this out. So let me hit play, and then I'll pick up the sword. And when I try to press 1, you can see that the animation is now blended. The feet is moving by itself, and the upper body is moving as well. But there's still quite a bit of problem right here, because you can see that as the animation is playing, the whole upper body is kind of moving left and right, shaking left and right, and the legs are kind of like widening apart as the mannequin is running around. So we'll have to fix that. And to do that is we have to go to the layer blend per bone over here, and then blend depth. We'll have to change the number for this. So for the spine, since the blend depth pertains to how many bones it will affect, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. So with the blend depth of 4, it will search for the rest of 4 bones up in the chain of the bone. Epic Games doesn't really tell you what exactly blend depth does, but from what I can understand as I'm testing this out, it's basically how many bones it will be affecting it. So for the right and left thigh, since we don't want any effect at all, so we can change the blend depth into -1. So let's do that, and then we'll do compile and save. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. Pick up the sword, and then I'm going to press 1. And now you can see that the body is not moving back and forth that much at all anymore, and the legs are not as wide open as before. So you can see that this is working. And you'll notice if you keep trying this out, is that if you keep spamming 1, you can see that there's something going on with animation. So that's another bug that we have to fix, and this is actually a pretty easy fix as well. All right, so let's go back into our blueprints. So I'm going to go back to the contents, into the blueprints folder, and then go select my BP third person character. Open that up. And what we're going to do is after the isValid node over here, we're going to add in a boolean to check if the weapon is switching or not. So from the variables, I'm going to make a new variable, and then I'm going to call this as is switching weapon, like so. And then I'm going to drag that in and do a get. And from the get, I will do a branch. So we want a branch to check if the weapon is switching or not. So connect this from the isValid to the execution of the branch. And then if it's true, then that means the weapon is switching. And if the weapon is switching, I'm just going to do a print string right here. And then name this print string as weapon is switching. So then I can know that the weapon is indeed switching while I'm in game, right? And then from the false, since by default the weapon is switching, let me compile and save first. So by default, we're going to set the weapon switching is off since we're not switching yet. So we need to make this to be true when we trigger this execution over here. So let's drag that in and then do a set. And actually, I'm going to move all this out by a bit, and probably maximize the window for a bit, and then plug that into the false, and then plug that into the switch on name, and then make this as checked, so then it's true. All right, and over here, so at first I had it like this on complete, so Actually, we will want to have this on the execution right over here, not on complete. So for the on complete, we want to use the switching weapon boolean instead. So let's do a set, and then we'll have this to set as false when it's completed. So when the montage animation sequence is played until completion, then we will switch this switching weapon boolean into false. So then we can trigger this whole process again. So once it's true, it'll trigger this print screen, and once it's false, it'll go through this part and it'll trigger the montage. So let's do that. And over here too, we'll have this switch weapon as false. So compile and save. And that should fix the issue. So let's test this out. And you can see that now I can't spam switching. On the upper left corner, you can see that the prompt for its weapon is switching is out. And then I can't mix and match. The animation of the montage won't mix and match anymore. So that will be a way to fix it. And that will be all for this episode. And again, I apologize for having this video out late, since I'm still kind of going through a lot of different stuff in my life right now. But I'll work on these tutorials as much as I can when I have the time. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a lovely day. And as always, never stop learning.